happy last week of March. I'm Barbara Tanner Wallace. This is Donna Jones Allward. For those who've never watched us, we are both historical fiction authors and gigantic historical fiction fans. How you doing, Donna?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually having a good day today. I don't know why. It's sunny out, which it's been so rainy all winter. I think having
this
extra
whole month,
days.
yeah, this whole month has been
awesome. Extra days of sun this week have been very welcome. So, but we have a special guest today. We're super excited to have Sara Ackerman with us as our featured author. She's the Hawaii-born USA Today bestselling author of historical novels set in the islands. And we've got some little kudos here. Your books have been called Unforgettable by Apple Books, Empowering and Deliciously Visceral by Book Riot.
I love that one.
Fresh and Delightful by Kate Quinn, and Brilliantly Written by Madeline Martin. And if for our Step in the Story fans, you know that we think Kate and Madeline are both like the bee's knees. So like this is high praise indeed. This is your sixth novel. It's The Uncharted Flight of Olivia West. I have a copy here. Oh, Barb's got the PDF already. And it's inspired by real events of a female aviator who defies the odds to embark on a daring air race across the Pacific. So Sara is joining us today from, I guess, a not so sunny but still bright Hawaii. So welcome to Step into the Story, Sara.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're delighted that you're here.
We're psyched. And so before we start asking you questions, we do have some. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, which Don and I both adored. And I think you should tell people a little bit more about it because it's much more complicated than the description makes it sound.
Yeah, so this is, it was my first novel that is not set during World War II. So that was exciting on its own. And it's another dual timeline. So it is set in 1927 and 1987. And the 27 storyline, we follow Olivia West, who is, she's a navigator, and she's determined to get into this air race called the Dole Air Race, which when I was looking for story ideas, I came upon this in an old book, and I had never heard about the Dole Air Race, which really surprised me. Because growing up in Hawaii my whole life, I would have thought I would have heard this race, but the race was put on by James Dole, just after Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic. And it was a huge deal. And the thing about it that I realized was there was only one woman in the race, and she wasn't a pilot. And so, but there were plenty of women pilots at that time that were very capable. And so, I write fiction. So I thought, well, what if I create a pilot? And so Olivia West was born. So we follow her trying to get into the race, and then during the race and a little bit after the race. But then in the 1987 storyline, we have a woman who inherits an old barn in a remote part of the Big Island. And in this barn are some old artifacts, old planes. And then so we kind of follow along with Ren, the character in that storyline. As I guess hers would be kind of considered a coming of age story. And she learns about some family secrets, and we kind of learn there was a little bit of mystery involved in the race. So we end up learning about it. And then the two storylines connect towards the end in kind of a fun way.
Yeah. I have to say that as I was reading Ren's story, there were so many times where, there's no power at the barn, there's no plumbing at the barn, and she's trying to solve problems. And I kept thinking why doesn't she just call on her cell phone? And then I realized it's 1987, or, she's trying to find out things about perhaps the race or whatever. And I'm like, oh, she can just Google that. And I'm like, no, she can't. This is old school. So I actually really enjoyed that because I kept thinking, oh, right, she's actually going to go do the work we had to do, or at least Barb and I had to do when we were younger.
I know.
Well, I will laugh because I said, why is she setting it then? And I'm like, oh, wait, all these people would be dead if she did it now.
Yeah, exactly. You always have a reason for the one I'm writing now. It's 100 years apart, and it's in 2005, and there is so I do have the internet, so I'm actually tackling that problem right now. Like, oh, she would be able to find out this information.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a flip side to that too, right? Because it's easily, if you can Google it or do a search for it, then sometimes, you know, that also makes plotting the story more difficult because things are easier to solve.
Right.
Speaking of solving or researching, one of the things I really loved, my husband's in aviation, by the way. And so one of the things I really loved about this book was the great job you did showing Olivia's expertise as far as both as a pilot and as a navigator. And the amount of detail that you wove into the story is so amazing, but you did it realistically. Like, so I always say when an author really wants to give the reader some facts and some research, that if they don't do it the right way, it's like, oh, your research is showing. But I didn't find that here. I felt like it really came from Olivia or from Livy and her showing her competence, her knowledge. Like, it never felt like you were beating the reader over the head with it. It was just who she was. And you did such a good job of weaving that in that way. So my big question is, how did you manage to research and absorb so much? Because it is very technical in some spots.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad you think that. It was, you know, I feel like I got lucky in a way because regarding the navigation, I was looking through a storeroom or clearing out my dad's old storeroom. And in it, I found a book published in 1926. So that was 1 year before the race. And it's called American Practical Navigator, I think. And it's about this thick. And it is everything that I needed to know in detail. And I was just completely amazed at how complicated it was back then to be able to navigate, you know. I mean, these people had to have so much information in their heads, and also to be able to look up charts and books. And
yeah,
that book was really helpful. It was very kind of serendipitous that I found that.
And then someone said they read that book cover to cover in the book. Your book.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then with the flying part, there's a book called Race to Hawaii he covers the three like first flights to Hawaii, and one of them is this one. And there is a lot of detail. So I was really thankful to find that. And then Charles Lindbergh's book, The Spirit of St. Louis, was very, very helpful and very detailed, and as well as beautifully written. I mean, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. My dog is scratching at the door behind me. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. We always have time for puppers.
That's it.
I thought she might stop and give up, but she didn't.
It's all right. There's a good chance a cat will roam across the screen too. So.
Yeah, one of Barb's cats usually makes an appearance as well, so we're pet friendly in here.
Okay.
And this is your first book that's not set in World War II. So was it a challenge to switch gears from doing that, or was it exciting to write in a new period? How did that go for you?
The second storyline in The Codebreaker's Secret was 1965 here at the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel. And so that kind of helped me transition out. I had been wanting to for a while. You know, I love the World War II stories. I really enjoyed writing them and researching them. But, you know, I had written 5, and I kind of felt like it was time to move on. Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little about how Livy's storyline came about. But a lot of times readers are curious about, we don't pull back the curtain on the creative process. And one of the things is Ren and Livy are both really great characters to root for, and they're both fleshed out. And like you said, Ren has a real coming of age story. I know the book started with writing about the Dole Challenge, but how did you come up with what was your inspiration for the more modern storyline? How did you develop that?
I'm never quite sure how sometimes these come about. I just knew that there was going to be information that I needed to show later that would be easier, I think, if I had another storyline. And I always loved the idea of kind of someone inheriting some, remote thing with interesting old artifacts in it. And so that kind of came about, I think, sort of just with me plotting. A lot of times when I go for walks or I'm driving, I'm just kind of thinking like, what would be a cool way to kind of complement this other storyline. And then also regarding the care home that she ends up working in, my mom was in care homes at that point, and she had dementia. And so I was spending a lot of time in care homes with older people. And so that was kind of the inspiration for that. And it worked out well. I thought, I don't know, kind of added some heart, I feel like, to that storyline.
Oh, I
Yeah.
loved I really loved that part. So,
Yeah. And so the other thing you have in a lot of your books is animals, and in particular, like dogs. And
I love the dogs.
I know, and you have two dogs really in this book, but you have one that involves a storyline that involves a semi-feral dog, and so, like, do animals always play a role in your books, and why is that? You're gonna get squishy about animals now.
I love animals. And my first book was partly centered around a lion that the Marines had here in Waimea. It was kind of a mascot. They had this lion here in Hawaii that kind of got me started on books altogether, because my grandma had always talked about this lion. So, and I really found that I enjoyed it. I feel like it just adds another dimension, and it also really helps kind of reveal character, animal, how they treat animals and how they. And then in the second book, The Lieutenant's Nurse, there was like a little rescue dog also at Pearl Harbor that one of the soldiers had in the hospital, and so it kind of turned out to be like a little therapy dog. And so with each story, and same with my next book, so they kind of organically arise as just, I feel like, characters do. Sometimes they start off as part of the plot, and other times they'll just suddenly walk into the story, which is what happened with this book. I didn't really plan on that.
Yeah, and even the dog that's not feral, is it Scout? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
And just like, he doesn't go anywhere without him. Like, and it's like, that says a lot about him, that his buddy goes everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really love that. I'm always a fan of bringing animals in. So, and we're, like I said, we're very pet friendly, animal friendly here.
I really liked I liked how the dog kind of grew with Ren. So,
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't you could see the dog evolving too, and it sort of mirrored what was happening in her life.
Right. And then she wasn't alone, so it just made it a little less scary. And
Yeah.
And she's very sorry for herself at the beginning, and then she's very outwardly at the end, and the dog kind of learns to trust. It was just really sweet.
Oh,
yeah. I love that. Barb, you have a question about her next book.
I do. Well, I noticed, and this is me, but I noticed, we talked about this offline. This book had a much different vibe than your other books. It was, very fast paced. It just felt like more women's fiction-y in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because both Livy and Ren had kind of a finding themselves journey of self-discovery, and you said a coming of age. So I'm curious, are we seeing the beginning of a genre shift with you? Are we going to start seeing a little bit more women's fiction coming from Sara Ackerman?
I think so, because my next book, The Maui Effect, which comes out in November, is more of a romance women's fiction, I would say. Like where the love story is actually more central to the whole story, but also her development and I think growth in this story. So yeah, and then I have a few other books in the works or ideas. And then also I'm almost done with writing my next book, which is another, well, no, it's not a dual timeline. Yes, it is a dual timeline. And that one also, I think, it's a little bit more of a kind of a murder mystery. It's not World War II, but it is set in 1905 and 2005. And so, yeah, I would say it's a little bit more, it's not the war heavy and it's more character with some mystery thrown in for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Maui effect? Because you said it's up for pre-order now. So
yeah, the Maui effect, it's about, I'm trying to memorize my pitch. It is about a conservation biologist on Maui who ends up breaking her number one dating rule when she falls for a mainland surfer from the mainland. And she's trying to, there's a developer on the island that is trying to set up an eco resort at this pristine waterfall kind of in the native forest. And, if you know anything about Maui and Hawaii, our native forest is very endangered and, it's being constantly, there's disease and there's development and loss of habitat. And so all those things come into play. But, and then they go on these adventures around the world. And he's chasing waves, the size of 9-story buildings. And so there's an element of kind of danger and suspense there as well.
And that's set in present day?
Yeah. 2012, actually. So
okay. So
almost
close.
Fairly contemporary, yes.
Yeah. And it's actually told in both of their point of views. So his point of view and her point of view.
Right, so it's a real departure from what you usually people.
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different, but I feel like it's also, if you read my books, I think it has the same feel to it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this one will be a very good bridge because people should read this one, and you'll see that a little bit of a change in style, and you'll be ready for it. So it's not a surprise, but
yeah, I know, not just World War II to Maui love story.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your typical writing day like? Do you have a typical writing day? Because I don't. I wish I did more. But what's your routine normally like? People kind of like to see how other people work.
I know, it's always fascinating to me as well. So I always write in the morning. My goal with these last couple books has been to write 400 words before I get out of bed in the morning. So I wake up pretty early. I like your cat there.
Thank you. Yep. Every time.
Oh,
yeah,
so
you said he was going to show up.
Did you say before you get out of bed?
So cute.
Did you write before you get out of bed? Did I hear that right?
So I write 400 words before I get up and just, laying back on my computer. And then I'll usually take a break, eat, go for a walk or swim or paddle. Because I'm up in the mountains, but I'm about 10 or 15 minutes from the beach. And so it's cold up here, but it's usually always warm and sunny down there. So do that and then write again. I kind of like to write in bursts. I try to write. So for this book, I've been really diligent about 1,000 words a day. And so I'll do several sessions throughout the day of writing and then 500 words on the weekend. And then that's it. And then in between, I'll check my social media or if I have to create graphics or, write a little article, I just work on all that stuff sort of in between. So that's my day.
It actually sounds kind of lovely.
It does.
It is. And then, in the afternoon, again, watch the sunset. But I appreciate it because I was always a teacher. I always worked in schools. And so it's nice not to be on that very strict schedule. I appreciate the free time and the flexibility.
Yeah. Did you say 5,000 a day?
No, 1,000.
Okay, good. Because I was like, 5,000 a day? I was like, what?
Oh, no.
No, that makes much more sense, especially when you're writing historical.
Yeah, I know. Especially, I feel like Radar Girls and The Codebreaker's Secret were very, very hard to write in terms of the research for the code breaking and the radar stuff. That took a lot.
Yeah. Sure. No, I feel much better because I thought you said 5,000 and I was going to be like, this girl's superwoman.
No.
So she can write a book in a week.
Right? I'm like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Not that I haven't done that before, but that's generally like if I'm writing contemporary romance and I'm getting toward the end, because the ends always tend to write faster for me.
Me too.
But I can't do that on a daily basis. Like that's not a pace I can maintain at all. No. So phew.
Plus, I mean, you must be like us in that when you went to do check something on research, you're suddenly sucked into the rabbit hole and an hour's gone by like, oh, yes. I was supposed to be writing. I was supposed to just look up this date. And almost always you didn't look that thing up. You just got sucked into another rabbit hole.
I know. It's true. It takes so much time. So
yeah,
I felt like the Maui effect was nice because I grew up around big wave surfing. You know, I've surfed my whole life, and also I've done a lot of forest reforestation and conservation work, and a lot of hiking. So I honestly didn't have to look much up at all.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we always ask our guests two important questions. The first you already answered because one is, what are you working on? But you said you're working on a semi-murder mystery set 100 years apart.
Yeah.
And we won't
ask so exciting.
That sounds so fun. We won't ask you to tell
based on a real story, a true story, and of a poisoning in a hotel in Waikiki in 1905, and there was. It was never solved, even though many people have their theories. So yeah, it's been fun to write.
Oh, I'm very excited about
that. That sounds really fun.
So we'll look for that in 2025.
Yeah. I think summer 2025.
Ooh, nice. Okay, so our second question that we always ask our guests is, what are you reading right now?
Well, I just finished, I've been listening to books more. As much as I love reading and I prefer to have a hard copy in my hands, I just, with my eyes, writing so much and how busy I've been listening to books. So I just finished The Frozen River.
Oh, I love that.
So good. So good. I think what I looked at one of your past videos, and I think was one of you were saying you had imposter syndrome after reading that.
Or both of us.
I know. Yeah. I felt the same way. It was
so good.
So layered and so tightly plotted. It was wonderfully written.
And you just feel like you're there. She did such a brilliant job of just immersing us in that story. So I did love that. I have tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. I have an actual book, which I might start that. I have some nonfiction. I just watched a movie called Heal, a documentary about healing, obviously. And I downloaded, there's a book, similar book. So I just downloaded that and might listen to that. But I'm actually right in between books. And I have Iron Flame, also totally different, that I read. I listened to The Fourth Wing and I enjoyed it. So I can't decide which one to start.
Right. Frozen River was, we both just really, really loved it and thought it was so well written. But I have to say, I can't really compare yours to hers because they're two very, very different books. But I found your story just so enjoyable. And I found myself really connected to the characters. So I really, really loved it just for different reasons.
And you mentioned, you said that, you know, the Frozen River area Lahone makes you feel like you're there, but I kind of felt the same way about this book because you really were present in it, and it's very bingeable. So for people
It
to know
is
that,
bingeable.
you can't.
It's funny. Yeah, I've
Um,
had a few people be like, "Oh, I read it in a day or two," and you know, whenever you hear that, on one hand you're like, "Yay, this is such a compliment," and then other hand you're like, "It took me so long to."
I know, right?
What did I text you last night? I'm like, those last 50 pages are killing me. She's got, all I want to do is figure it out. And
Yeah.
And I got teary at the end. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
You know, whenever I'm writing the book, at the point where I finally start kind of crying, I'm like, yes, I finally have tapped into that, you know, that feeling that I want readers to feel, the emotions. So.
Well, I think what happens is that, you know, when you connect so closely to the characters, then if the reader can also connect so closely to the characters, then when things happen, whether they're good things or bad things that elicit a lot of emotion, like the reader goes on that ride with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And they're very easy characters to connect with. Very,
very likable characters. So we're so glad you came to join us, though. We're going to be on time for we're doing.
I know, right?
Well, we're really glad you came. I'm glad we could work out the time difference.
Yeah, thank you.
And everyone has to read The Uncharted Flight of Olivia West. It is a great book.
I want my copy too.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure we share all the buy links and how they can find you on Instagram and Facebook and your webpage, things like that. Yeah. And we hope this makes the New York list, or not the New York. Well, the New York list too will work, but the USA list again. And we'll look forward to the Maui Effect.
Thank you so much,
Donna. What do we got coming up?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, Barb. So our April book of the month, and we'll be discussing this in April, and everyone can check our socials for exact dates when we announce them, is The Queens of London by Heather Webb, which is about a real-life gang of female thieves who ruled the London Underground in the 20s. So I think that's going to be a really fun adventure. And then later in the month, our featured author is Piper Hughley, who is the author of American Daughters. And of course, we talked about By Her Own Design last year. That was so, so excellent. So we're really looking forward to having Piper on.
And she's one of the original Step in the Story people.
She is one of the original Step in the Story authors. Yeah.
So thank you again. We really appreciate having you. It's The Uncharted Flight of Olivia West. And we will see everybody next week or in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Thank you both. And it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
We look forward to seeing you online. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.